Today's episode is all about your personality. Well, not yours in particular, but personality assessments and how you can use them to communicate with all of your loved ones. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Hey friends, you are in for a treat today. If you have listened to the last few episodes, we have talked a lot about communication. And today we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into one aspect of communication, really one way of improving your communication. And it can apply to your spouse or even your stepkids. Really, you can use it with anyone in your life. But before we get there, I want to tell you a couple of things because we have got a lot of exciting stuff going on right now. The last couple of episodes, if you've listened, I have mentioned that I'm opening the doors back up to the Blended Family Formula course, and that is coming up next week. So get excited. To celebrate all of that, I want to invite you to a free masterclass for stepmoms. It is called The 3 Lies Keeping You from Your Best Blended Family Life and the One True Thing That Will Set You Free. I am offering 2 different times, on Tuesday, April 5th and Wednesday, April 6th. And you can go to thiscustomlife.com/stepmomlies to sign up. In the masterclass, it's going to be an hour long, and you will learn a major mindset shift that's going to change the way you approach your role as stepmom. You are going to learn what you're doing that you think is helping you, but is actually standing in the way of your best blended family life. And you're going to learn that that thing you've been chasing after the most doesn't actually exist, which means that you have been way too hard on yourself and trying to live up to an impossible standard. This masterclass is so good, y'all. You really want to be there. And did I mention it's totally free? So we do have limited seats available. It is first come, first serve. So head over to thiscustomlife.com/stepmomlies to sign up, and I will put the link in the show notes as well. So let's jump into today's amazing guest. Okay, guys, let's jump to our amazing guest today. Nearly 30 years ago, Karen Bemmes sat straight up in bed while reading a book called Positive Personality Profiles. She looked at her husband and said, "I understand Lisa for the first time in my life." You see, Lisa is her sister-in-law who she never quite clicked with. But because of that book, she did, and they have stayed close for more than 30 years. Since then, she has used the DISC behavior system that she learned about in that very book to improve every area of her life, which inspired her to get certified to teach about DISC, and she now helps other professional women improve their personal and professional life while making it all feel very simple, easy, and natural. Karen even makes housekeeping and organization easier with the whole home reset program, which, I need some of that in my life, I think. She takes something she used to hate and makes it so easy and quick that you can get your home in order and get to the fun stuff faster, which is amazing. You can learn all the ways that DISC can help you on her website, movingtowardbetter.com, and you can connect with her on social media at the handle Moving Toward Better. And I'm going to link to her site and all of her social media handles, which you can find at thiscustomlife.com/episode 37. Karen, I'm so glad you're here.
I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Karen and I have known each other for a few years now, and we've been in some different, masterminds and mind trusts and stuff like that together. And we've talked about our businesses for a couple of years and have talked about finding a way to work together. And I'm so excited we finally are. So if y'all listened to episode 35, I talked a lot about how communication really underpins all of the stepmom stuff that we all deal with, right? Like you can't make any of this work without good communication. And I teased you in that episode that a couple of the bonuses for this year's Blended Family Formula course are related to that. I'll give you a little bit more about that in a little bit. But if you want to get on the wait list so that you are the first to know about everything, head to thiscustomlife.com/waitlist. And I might even open the doors a smidge early if you're on the wait list. So I'm going to put that link in the show notes as well. So we're going to talk today about how we communicate and relate to our step families. And so it's actually perfect timing that Karen is here. So let's dive into all this. This is, I find this stuff so fascinating, Karen. We're going to talk about personality assessments and how they can help all your family relationships. Tell me how you got into all this. And we know you read the book, and that was kind of your aha moment, but give us your background.
Well, I'll be honest with you. We were in an MLM at the time, and that was a recommended book during that. And of everything I got out of that MLM, that book was the best thing.
And tell everyone what an MLM is.
It's a multi-level marketing thing. It was an online thing. We were only in it a couple of years, but I got this book out of it. And what was so amazing about it was that at the same time, I had this sister-in-law that I liked her, but like you said, we just never clicked. We could never quite understand each other. I always felt that she was very cold and very distant, and she thought I was a flake. I mean, that's, being honest, it was like, I like her, and that was the way we looked at it. The other thing is that at that time, I was a new mom. And this first child of mine was like something I'd never seen before. He wasn't like me and he wasn't like my husband. And I really wasn't sure how to deal with him because I was talking about being in balance and out of balance. And when he was out of balance, he was a monster. In balance, he was a great kid, but out of balance, he was a monster in my mind. And so that's what made me start thinking about all of this stuff. And when I read that book and I read other books like it, I started to understand some things. And
figure out how you could deal with the monster.
Absolutely. And the thing that really, I don't like to talk about sad things very often because I'm a really upbeat, positive person. But the thing that really made me dial in and say, I want to understand this stuff, happened in April of 1999. Columbine, and I get choked up every time I even say the word, changed my life. Because at that moment, I wanted to know what makes that. Because I had called my kid a monster when he was a little kid, and I was like, what makes that monster? What creates that? And how can I keep it from happening? Because I ended up having, at that time I had 2 sons, now I have 3. And I'm like, how do I keep that from happening? How do I make sure that my male children don't ever go out and do the kind of things that I saw done that day?
And I think a lot of people thought that. I mean, for those that are listening that were around those days, I mean, I think we all remember where we were when that happened. It was such a pivotal moment in, our country. And I mean, it was in my life, I think the first really big kind of school shooting, and it was traumatic, I think, for everyone, but I think especially for families, and how to talk to kids about it and how to relate to your own kids, because it's like a parent's worst nightmare that happens, right?
Absolutely. And my son,
on either side of it, that your child is perpetuating it or that your child is a victim of it.
Well, and my son my oldest son had just turned 5. So we're looking at him going to school for the first time. So you're right. I was thinking of it as that parent, but also, oh my gosh, my kid's going into this atmosphere that we always thought was safe. School was always your safe place. And suddenly school wasn't safe anymore. So I was like, I want to figure this out. I want to figure out what kind of personalities, what happened to these kids. And the truth is, I understand it better, but I still don't understand what it was. I'd have to go way deeper into the psychology of it, I think. But it helped me shape my own children to be better in every way. And one of my favorite phrases, and if you're not Christian, please stick with me on this. But there's a phrase in the Bible that says, raise the child up in the way he should go. And when he is grown, he will not depart from it. Some people say that that's, you got to give them these values and you got to give them this. I look at it this way. I look at it a little different because my kids each have very unique personalities. But by parenting them the way they need to be parented, instead of parenting each one the same way, I give them the best shot at being the most successful them they can be.
And when you say parenting them the way they need to be parented, I think you're saying it's sort of like the concept of communicating with them in a way that they will receive what you're trying to get across to them, right? So like you're not going to communicate to everyone in the same manner because people don't receive information in the same way. And so the DISC assessment and kind of evaluation and kind of diving into that helps you figure out how to tailor your communications in ways that people can receive them, but then also helps you understand maybe what people are trying to say when they're communicating with you.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly. And I'll just give you a really quick example of that. My oldest, if I wanted him to do anything, and this is an easy little kid to parent. They're a tough teenager, but they're an easy little kid. He needs challenges, choices, and consequences. He needs that to be very clear. And when you've got a little kid, you can do that. You're like, we used to call it the seatbelt race. When we would get in the car, we're like, who can put their seatbelt on the fastest? He always won, okay? There was a time where I actually had to say to him at one point, I'm like, you could let your brothers win once in a while. And he's like, what's the point of that? He's that kid, okay?
That's me too.
Well, and the truth is he has mellowed, that was when he was like 12. He's 28 now. He has mellowed in that part of his life, but he was very driven and he needed those challenges and he needed choices. And that child from 3rd grade on, I never had to worry about him with school because he was very driven. And I always said he was that kid. I was like, we got to keep him on the straight and narrow because if he goes off, we'll never get him back. Or it will take a monumental effort to get him back. Where you go from that to my youngest child who could give 2 hoots about whether you're going to challenge him to a seatbelt race. He couldn't. He's going at his own pace, which is a much slower pace than I'm used to, but more matches his dad. He's got that nice, steady, even, doesn't get flustered, doesn't get ruffled. You can't move a mountain that doesn't want to move, unless you blast through it. And then sometimes they're scarred for life. So, it's a very different dynamic of what worked for that oldest one versus what works for that youngest one.
Totally. So let's take a step back and talk a little bit about the DISC method, right? Because people listening may be like, what the heck is DISC? I've never heard of this. So, if you have, in a lot of workplace settings, you may have taken various assessments, Myers-Briggs, there's a Berkman, there's DISC, there's also in relationships, people talk about the love languages and the Enneagram, and there are all kinds of different, tools to help you understand how you communicate and how others communicate. Give us the background. What does DISC stand for? Tell us a little bit about the actual DISC method, DISC system.
Okay. Very quick cliff notes. We split people into 4 basic categories. People are either outgoing or they're reserved. And we use those words very purposefully. We don't say extroverted and introverted. We say outgoing and reserved. And we say that because there are people who... and I actually had somebody say this to me, somebody in our world, in our blog world one time. She goes, I'm not an introvert. And I said, no, but you're reserved. And she goes, what do you mean by that? I said, you'll talk to anyone who comes to you, but you're not going to go out and work the room. And she's like, oh yeah, that's totally me. And I said, that's why we don't use introverted. I said, now, when you get to a certain point in being reserved, yeah, those people are pretty introverted for the most part. But then there's a lot of people who have the outgoing traits that it's a mild form of that, if you know what I mean. Like They're driven, but they're quietly driven. They're not out there like knocking people out of their way to be successful. Okay, so that's the outgoing and reserved. Then we also have a separation of task orientation and people orientation, where people are more naturally drawn to tasks, and that's where they're comfortable living, is what we call it. And then there's other people who are more people oriented, okay? And then when you split, we put it in a circular form. You have outgoing, task-oriented people are your Ds. They're driven, they're often dominant, they're decisive, they're doers. They're on the go people. Then you've got your Is, who are outgoing and people-oriented. They're inspiring, inspired, interested, innovative. Then you've got your reserved and people-oriented. Those are your S's, and they're sweet, they're stable, they're security-seeking. And then you've got your C's, who are reserved and task-oriented. And they are cautious and careful and calculating. And I use calculating in a very positive way, because I've had people go, I'm not calculating. And I'm like, yeah, but you think about things all the time. When you think about the data, you're 12 steps ahead of everyone else and what that data is telling you. And you're risk assessing the whole time. And they're like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. I'm like, that's what I mean by calculating in that particular setting. And so most of us, not all, but most of us are a blend of two or more. There are people who are straight C, straight S, straight I, straight D. Some of us are two blends and some of us are three blends. And there is a very small percentage of people who assess. And we also call it an assessment, not a test, because it's not a test. You can't fail. They assess as what we call a level blend, where they are kind of an even balance of all four temperaments. What we have found, at least I have found it to be true, and the people that I work with have found it to be true, a true level person is very, very rare. Often when someone tests as level, they've been through trauma. And what they have learned is they've learned to be the person they need to be in a particular situation. And I think that's especially important to understand in the in a blended family, if there has been trauma when the family first came apart or came together. That particularly the kids, they find this way to be whatever you need them to be, which isn't really who they are. It's just they're trying to fit. So, and a lot of times I've had people that'll come take an assessment. They assess as level, they go to therapy, and they come back a year later and they assess very differently because.
So that's what I was going to ask you is, can you over a lifetime, if you take the test, now and then again in 3 years, will your assessment change?
Generally, it doesn't. When you take an assessment with us, we do what's called, there are graphs at the end, and there's your basic style and there's your environmental style. Your basic style is who you are at your most comfortable. Your environmental side is just that. For example, when I first took my assessment to be certified, my environmental, I am what we call an ISD, which means I'm double people oriented, but I have a little bit of that D in me. So I've got, a little bit of drive there as well. But when you looked at my environmental, my D was way high. And the trainer looked at me because if there's a big discrepancy, that's an area where you can have some stress in your life, if that makes sense. If you're having to be something you're really not. So the trainer said to me, "What's the situation here?" And I said, "My husband has none of this D quality." I said, "I raised 3 boys. They need me to be this." And he's like, "Well, as long as you're aware of this is why, then that's okay. If you're not aware of why these are different, that's where there's huge stress possibilities." And there was a lot, particularly for a couple of years with my oldest, because he felt ready to go on to things that that we knew it as his parents, he wasn't quite ready for emotionally. He's a really great kid, but he really wanted to take some reins, like staying out all night when he was 16, that we were like, no, you know. So, but again, that's that D child needs those boundaries, and he would push on those boundaries and push on them and push on them. But knowing that was his personality style made it so much easier to just not get annoyed with him all the time.
Yeah. So that's actually a great segue. You've talked a little bit about how this has helped in your family with, understanding how you communicate and kind of the strengths that you and your husband have and how to communicate with your kids. How would something like this help a blended family in terms of, I talk a lot with our listeners about, the importance of, strengthening your bond and your relationship with your spouse and with your kids. How would this help a blended family unit? And how do you get buy-in from the family to do something like this? Right? I could see, in a blended family situation, particularly if it's coming from stepmom. I mean, I think it would probably need to come from the biological parent. I could see the kids being like, I don't give a hoot about getting along with this lady.
Right.
Why should I do this?
Right. No, I
How do you get all that buy-in and get kids interested in it? How do you get your spouse to buy in and all of that kind of stuff?
Well, I think it all starts with, for me, it started with me taking my own assessment and looking at things and thinking, oh, not everybody thinks like me. Which, we all kind of know that, we know it on the surface, but
that's such a huge thing with communication, right? Because you expect, like, the things that you're saying are completely crystal clear to you. Mm-hmm. And you can't understand why your stupid spouse won't understand what you're saying.
Well,
they communicate differently, and what you're saying is clear as mud to them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, when I'm somebody who is double people oriented, and I was raised by a mother who is double task oriented. There's a reason she looked at me like, what planet is this kid from? Why can't she keep her room clean? I don't even know where to start.
You can understand each other.
I didn't even know where to start. And the more I learned about this, unfortunately, it was as an adult that I didn't have this when that I'm like, oh, that poor woman, I drove her insane because she just couldn't understand what I was thinking or how I was thinking. And I say this about, real quick again, the first argument my husband and I had, we were disagreeing about something. I need to get up and be active because I do have 2 outgoing traits. I need to move. I need to be physical to process. So I lean in. When my husband is stressed, he leans back. I speed up, he slows down. Now, what great confrontation that can be, right? And what happened was I got up, I started cleaning our home. He followed me from room to room, not saying anything, just watching me work. Which, of course,
made you nuts,
right,
I'm sure.
I'm just like, I look like the guy from,
what are you doing?
Well, if you've seen the movie Inside Out, I was angry at that point, and my head finally exploded, and I turned around and I went, what? And he's like, what? He was so shocked. He was like, what? I'm like, what do you want? And he's like, nothing. And again, I was unbalanced at the time. I will say that. I own it completely. I said, then help or get out of the way. And he goes, fine. And while I spent the next hour cleaning our place, he went down into the basement and read a book. And I'm upstairs going, how can you do that?
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, so that's what was so great about learning this stuff. When I realized that when stress comes, he needs to step back and process. And he knows that I'm going to be moving around, just get out of the room. Just get out of the space. Yeah. Let her work it out, where he's got to think it out, I got to work it out,
So for the stepmoms that are listening to this, would you say that their first step should be to take an assessment and see where they fall in all this, and then once they kind of understand where they are, then have a conversation with their spouse? And how what's the best way to frame that? Is it saying like, hey, I took this assessment and boy, the results sure are interesting, and I think you might find that it's spot on for me, do you want to know what I found?
I think that's a great place.
Have a conversation
I think
with
that's
them.
a great place to start, because what you're going to realize is that, one of my favorite parts of the assessment, there's a part where we talk about how people can misunderstand or misread you if they don't understand you. And it's amazing. I would say 99 people out of 100 look at that and go, yeah, either I can be that way, or I can see how people can see me that way. For example, one of my things is people can see me as flighty and indecisive, okay, if I'm under stress. And I totally understand that, because I'm spiraling in my mind. So I'm not making a decision because I'm pulling in I'm not typically a detail person, so I'm trying to grab all those details and figure it out. And that looks like, and sometimes I am paralyzed, and it looks like she can't make a decision. But I need to, that's where I'm processing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm processing, it looks like I'm ignoring it because I'm cleaning the kitchen. Mm-hmm. But it's because I need to move while I'm processing that. So that's where I think the value is, particularly when someone's unbalanced. Because, for example, some, like a D, like if you've got a D stepchild, for example, when they're angry when they're unbalanced, and they're going to say things and shout things, but the thing is, they pop off and then they're fine. Like all of a sudden you're like, are you kidding me? You just like railed on everybody and now you're fine and you want us to all be friends again? But that's literally how they are. It's like once they've released their tension, they're good. Now, what they've left in their wake can be very, toxic. But, the same.
And I was going to say, how many of us know somebody like that where they pop off and then they're fine and you're kind of like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, only 10% of the population is D's. And I'm like, if you're a person of faith, God did that for a reason, because you can only have so many chiefs. And these are people who like to take charge, right? And which is great when they're in balance. And when they're not, I always say you can't spell dictator without a D in it, right? So these are out of balance D people who are just dictators and despots and things like that. For the I personality, they're the ones who bring the fun, and they can be a lot of fun to be around when they are unhinged. It's, and I really disliked seeing this in my own assessment because, like I said, I'm an ISD. It says they exaggerate. And I'm like, I don't lie. And that's a thing, but we can exaggerate emotional terms. So like if I'm unbalanced, I have been known to say to my husband, nobody ever helps me around here. Which is not true. It feels like it in the moment because I'm drowning and I'm overwhelmed. So the exaggeration isn't, I'm not lying, but it feels like nobody ever helps me unless I tell them they have to. Mm-hmm. So I've had to learn to add that on, unless I ask for it. Nobody seems to take initiative, because when I say that to him, because he's a C and those details matter to him, in his head, he's like, wait a minute, I did the dishes for you last night. What do you mean I never help? And why are you so upset about the 3 dishes that we left in the sink? And it's because I'm the one who takes care of everything every morning. I'm the morning person, So it's that ebb and that flow, and when he gets upset, again, if I'm trying to have a conversation, at that point he shuts down.
Yeah.
But knowing that when he shuts down, I've hit that nerve really hard, then we both have to take a breath and start over.
So let me ask you this, because I feel like people probably are very curious about this. So you work with couples. I mean, you work with everyone, but you have done work
Right.
with couples where they'll both take the assessment and then you'll kind of talk about how to communicate with each other. When you see their results, have you ever had a couple that you have like looked at their, results and said, "Oh my gosh, they are never going to be compatible. This is just a recipe for disaster, these two." I mean, it's not because I think that people can be nervous taking these assessments, right? Like it's going to be some kind of judgment on their relationship or their compatibility, but it's not assessing the state of their relationship, right? Like you would never, have a situation where you're coming in and saying, "Yep, well, you're a D and you're an S and that's just never going to work," or whatever,
Absolutely not, because what I find in the vast majority of couples is that they share one personality trait, which means if they have two personality traits, guess what? The other one's in opposition, which is great until it's not, is what I say. As long as you're in balance, this works so well, right? It's when you're out of balance that this information becomes so important. Because, knowing that my husband needs to slow down, knowing that he is never going to be in a hurry, he has to be methodical, which means I've had to step back. Like I was that person who, like in the last 15 minutes, I could put it all together and run out the door. That exhausts my husband. It absolutely exhausts him. So I've had to step back and not had to. I've chosen to step back and be more of a planner because it helps him. Like my husband's 55 and we are already talking about the retirement process because he needs that. I can go do my own thing, but he wants to hear the steps. He wants to hear the planning part of it. And so that's, I tell everybody, I think everybody has an awesome personality and I can learn something from everyone. And there's something I can appreciate about everyone. And I think that's the beauty and the power in these assessments is that you get to learn. A lot of time it's a confirmation about what you are, but it's also sometimes a reframing of what you are.
Absolutely.
Where I had a guy one time, it was a husband and wife, and I work with a lot of, because I'm in the entrepreneurial space, I work with a lot of high-powered women with very supportive husbands who I think are two of the most unappreciated and misunderstood groups on the planet, right?
I would agree with you there.
I think they really are. And they were opening a business together and she was kind of the face of the business, which he was very happy to let her be. And during our meeting, he was like, "I just have to be more outgoing. I just have to be more outgoing." He was totally not an outgoing person. The amount of I in that man was minuscule. Okay. And I was like, "No, you don't." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You're going to hire those people. Don't be that person. You be you." I said, "Because you know what you're going to bring?" And this is how I can reframe something for you. I said, "You know what you're going to bring to the table? You're going to see that person standing back in the corner that's looking around like, do I really even belong here? And you're going to walk over to them and you're not going to overwhelm them with, 'Hey, welcome to the gym.' You're going to be like, 'Is there something I can help you with? Is there anything? This can be overwhelming, can it?' And they're going to go, 'Oh, this guy gets me.' And you could almost see the light bulb go off over his head that like for the first time, he saw himself and he saw his role in what they were doing. And it was like, I want to cry when I see that. It makes me so happy to see people get themselves in a different kind of way, especially that group of men. And one of my favorite things to say to high-powered women, and I have a feeling a lot of the people who are following you are, because they're taking charge of things. I have often looked at those high D women and I say, "You've been called the B word more than once in your life and you don't really care." And they laugh just like that. They laugh every time, right? And I've had other women get like their eyes get big and they look mortified that I've even said it. And I've actually turned around to a couple and said, she prefers that I talk to her this way. She's a no BS person. They'd rather hear me talk that way. But then I can look at them, because very often those are the women, and I imagine as a stepmom, it's even worse. You worry about the kind of mom you're supposed to be, right? Or the kind of stepmom you're supposed to be. And you're supposed to be you. And as I said to one mom one time, I said, you're not the kind of mom who's going to make hot chocolate and watch movies with your kids all afternoon. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'll make them hot chocolate and they're going out on the patio. And I'm like, that's cool. I said, but this is a mom who takes her kids hiking. They'll go out, to a play, or they'll go out to this, or they'll go out. But her husband is that cuddly person. So he gets to be that. She gets to be her. Everybody's happy. The kids are nurtured. It doesn't have to look like a Rockwell painting, because nobody's family looks like a Rockwell painting. I am telling you, I live in the heartland. Nobody's family looks like that.
Well, I can tell you, and that it's so funny you say that, because that's always the example I use when I talk about, when I first met Craig and settled down, is that, I thought life was going to look like the Thanksgiving dinner Rockwell painting of the family with the turkey being passed and all that. And I always laugh, because our first Thanksgiving, I made like this huge, Thanksgiving spread with all our family recipes. And my youngest stepson ate a cheese quesadilla because he didn't like any of the food. And there went my expectations for the whole thing, So tell me, if someone is looking to get an assessment done, do they have to work with you to get it? Can they get it online independently? How much does it cost? If someone wants to work with you to help interpret what it is that they're, getting in terms of results, like how would that work? How would somebody work with you, and what do you do with people? And give me all the things.
Okay, well, there are several different assessments that you can take. There is the Concise, which is what I usually work from, and that is a simple $12.95 assessment. Okay, and there will be a link that I will give to you that will take you to a page that kind of walks you through that, so that you can decide where you want to go with that. So there's the base.
And I'll put the link in the show notes for everybody listening. Don't worry. You can go to the show notes at thiscustomlife.com/episode 37, and we'll have all that there.
Perfect. And so the other thing is, they can always go to my website, to movingtowardbetter.com, and it'll be there as well. But the basic assessment is, or we call it Concise assessment. And very simply, it's 24 questions. I never see the answers. No one sees the answers. And I make that very clear, because I want people to be honest. Because if you're not honest, your assessment's not going to be the way it should be. And I've had people not be honest. I know it because I know them. And I'm like, you didn't answer this truthfully, because this is not who you really are. So it's 24 questions. Generally takes about 15 minutes. It will take the C personality a little bit longer, because they want to think things through. And we always tell somebody, there's going to be questions where you're like, well, sometimes I'm this and sometimes I'm this. We go 51-49. If you had to pick, I'm 51% this and 49% this, pick the 51. And what we find is, when they do that, then they get a really good assessment, right? And you get immediate results from when you go purchase this online, and it will give you a lot of valuable information.
And then when someone wants to work with you, they'll bring the results in, and you'll kind of help them understand how to apply them, or
right.
How does that
what they'll do is, when they go to this page, they'll enter their email address. They can pick which direction they want to go. They can do anything from the Concise to, we also have what's called our leadership assessment, which is much more in detail. Instead of being a 6-page report, it's a 63-page report that goes very in depth into your personality. And so we've got that. And then I will.
And is that more geared for people in the workplace, or is that for anybody?
It is really about leadership in general. It's not just about work leadership. It could be leadership in your church, in your home, however you really want to dive into it. And then I will follow up with an email that says, if you've already taken your assessment, we can and they can find that stuff on my website as well. We can book a session and talk about it and talk it through. But I think the value of doing it with me is, number one, I've done so many of them. I can look at certain things. I can know things about you just by knowing what your personality type is. And I can help you navigate. Because then as we start talking, what you're going to start thinking about is, when I talk about you're this way, you're going to think about how your spouse interacts with you in that. And you're like, oh, well, he's like this. And I'm like, well, then he's probably this personality type, and he could be this, or this and this, or this and this and something else. But odds are this is where he's coming from. And the other thing we have when two people take the assessment, and I think this is such a powerful tool, and it's a free tool that I give people. It's called an interaction guide. And I give you a link, and then you plug your 2 assessment codes in there, right? And it tells you how to deal with each other in different scenarios.
And you could do that for your whole family.
Oh, absolutely.
Assuming you could get the kids to participate in this.
And the other thing is, once you get the family together, we have something else called a team chart. And I can plot your family into a team chart. And you want to talk about a powerful tool for understanding people? It is incredible. For example, my family, all right? And I wish people could see it, because it is so telling when I pull up my family chart, okay? Everyone in my family is on the reserve side except for me. Everyone. 4 of them, including my middle son's fiance and my oldest son's wife, are in that S quadrant. Okay, so they're very reserved. One of them is a true S. She's just an S. The others are a mix. All of the ones that are mixed have that C personality. Okay. And then my two older sons are in the C and D categories. But there's no one that's a D to start with. And when the guy who trained me saw my team chart of my family, he literally looked at me and said, how do you people make a decision? And I said, by committee, because none of us wants to be the one responsible for making a bad decision. And that's literally the truth. And it's usually my son and I, because we have more D. And now my middle son, my oldest son, and I, we're the committee that usually makes the decisions. Because I'm up here. I'm on the people side. I'm outgoing. They're all reserved. They all have that C in their personality except for one. And it's like, this is what I'm knowing about this when my kids were growing up. And this is how you can relate to kids even better. My kids didn't take assessments till they were adults. So a lot of what I knew about them was what I had learned. And I just applied what I learned to them. But I knew they were reserved, like their dad. So I am a people-oriented morning person. They are task-oriented, not morning people. So I learned to tone myself down in the mornings. Where when they were babies, I was like, oh, good morning. When they got to be teenagers, that did not work anymore. So it was like, good morning. I kept my tone very even. I kept it like this. I kept things quiet. I would listen to music all day and be dancing around the kitchen. None of that when they were teenagers. The one requirement is, and I use love languages as well. My oldest child, when you do the love languages, you can take it as a teen if you have teens and have a parent take it alongside them, and you see how well you know them. The only thing I missed with my oldest son, I assessed him as a 2 for physical touch, which is very low, 2 out of 10. He assessed himself as a 0.
Wow.
This is why this child was so difficult for me as a baby. He hated to be cuddled. He hated to be held. He wanted to be free. And, again, learning this, you're like, this is why this kid never really wanted to snuggle or really even be hugged, to be honest. And you're like, that's when you kind of look and you're like, driven kid, doesn't like to be touched. That's that sociopath thing. We're like, that's scary. But what you realize is, acts of service were his thing. So it worked.
So that's great that you can kind of wrap all of that in together. And for our listeners, this is super exciting as we wrap this up. And I feel like I could talk about all of this stuff all day because I find it so interesting. And, I always love taking these assessments and kind of learning more about how I communicate and, figuring out how I can work with others and all of that good stuff. But so really exciting. When you sign up, and I've told y'all that the Blended Family Formula course is opening up the week of April 4th, so next week, okay? When we open up the course for admission, I am offering a bonus that is incredible. And I say I am offering it. Karen is coming to help me offer it because she is going to do a 90-minute workshop with students who sign up for the course, all about learning what the DISC system is, learning about communicating with your family and how you can improve that. And if you want to take the assessment before you do the workshop, you can. She's going to go through some of my results and use me as an example, which I think is going to be super fun. So I think that is going to be a hugely exciting bonus that we are so thrilled to offer as part of the course. It is a $299 value, but you are going to get it for free if you sign up for the Blended Family Formula course. So I am plugging that for you right now, and you can head over to thiscustomlife.com/waitlist to make sure you get on the waitlist so that you can grab a spot in the course and get this bonus because it is going to be so much fun. Karen, this was so fun. I thank you so much for being here. And if people want to work with you, is the best thing they should go to your website?
Yes, I think that's probably the easiest thing to do is go to movingtowardbetter.com. And the best place to look at what we're going to be doing is on my About Me page. And just scroll down and you can find it. And I'm going to have a video on there that will show you kind of how we go through an assessment, just like we'll do in your course. And and we'll just, it'll give you kind of a glimpse so that if you need those extra pieces of information of, okay, I'm not really sure I want to do this, but this will show you how. And this will show you how I look at and interpret your information.
That's fantastic. That'll be great. Well, I'm going to put all those links, as I said, in the show notes, thiscustomlife.com/episode 37. And you can find Karen at movingtowardbetter.com and on social media at movingtowardbetter. Karen, thank you so much. This was really great. So much fun. This is great information for stepmoms, and I'm so excited for folks to be able to apply this to their blended families.
Me too. Thank you for having me, and I'm so excited about the bonus class. You guys, we are just going to learn so much and make it hopefully a better situation for everybody.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll see you next time. That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.